All right, so let's go ahead and get started. It looks like our participation here has slowed to a trickle. We are at 13 participants with this group, so we'll go with what we have. If more people join us here in a bit, we'll admit them in at that time. So I want to look at a couple of things before we get into review of our notes, but if you didn't hear me say this when you first came in, please make sure that you have your notes for the slope-intercept form, because we're going to take a look at those, make sure everything gets filled out properly, that we get any questions answered in regards to this format for linear functions. But first thing I want to look at is a new policy that got posted to probably everybody's page in terms of your teachers for your EDSB pages. So let me get to, we'll just go to the third period class here real quick and share that screen with you so we can take a look at it together. All right. So we did an update to our late work policy. All right, so it's right here. You can see it. It says update late work policy for online learning. It's pinned over here on the side in both second and third period classes, right above the YouTube channel. So if you're missing any of these Zoom classes, you can go there to watch them. And so what the policy says that if once we set a due date, all right, that can include, the due date can include like a time, like I wanted you to have your notes done before you come to Zoom class. So I'm setting a time on those things. If it's not in by that date and time, it will be considered late. All right, so each day that that assignment is late, it will have a 10% deduction. So, and that's each class day. So for example, if I had something due today and we wanted to, let's say it was due today, I'm sorry, and we wanted to take a look at the grade for it at that point, if it's not in, it will start getting a late deduction starting tomorrow. So, and each day after that, you would get a 10% deduction. And that can happen for up to 5 days. So let's say you had 100% on that assignment when you turn it in. If you turn it in 5 days late, a 50%. All right, so please make sure that you're turning things in on time to me. And if something shows up as not being, sorry, one second. I'm just trying to admit, or actually not admit someone. We're going to talk about that here in a second. If you have something that's 100%, it would be a 50% at that point. But with the 6th day, then it would actually turn into a 0. All right. So make sure that you're getting it in. That's basically giving you an extra week to get it in, but you're getting points deducted on each of those. So if you're someone who has accommodations for extra time and you need that extra time to get that done, please make sure to get in touch with your teachers, whether it's through their office hours or sending an EDSB message. We'll work out a new time for you to get that assignment in. All right, we'll discuss with you what you think is a reasonable time, what we think is a reasonable time for additional time to that assignment, and then that will be your new due date. All right, so let's say you say, all right, I need 2 more days to get this done. Okay, cool, we'll give you 2 more days. That's your new due date. After that, that 5 or 10% penalty will start to kick in with 5 days late on it, okay? Any questions on that new policy? All right, let me get to Trevor here. Trevor, what's your question?
Do I have any late assignments that I need to make up? Or
I can check for you later.
Okay.
If you want to just take a look at your EDSB, anything that is right now should be up to date. as far as indicating whether or not you're overdue on an assignment. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions regarding that policy? It's not terribly different than the policy I've had most of the year in terms of turning things in late with a 10% penalty. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at something else also with IXL. I mentioned this last time, but I have been having some issues with things showing up. Sorry, that's the wrong one. With things showing up as not having been done and you've done it. So if that happens to you, if you see something shows up as overdue and you've got a 0 in for that grade at that point, and I will put a 0 in after it's due. Once you turn it in, I'll switch that grade to whatever the new grade is. All right, so if it's let's say you turned it in and it was 100%, it was a day late, you would get the 10% deduction for a 90, and I would change your grade to that 90%. But once it's past due, I'll put it in as a 0 until that grade changes, okay? Now, with IXL, like I said, I've been having some issue with some people. It's not all of you, but it's some people are showing up as not having done an assignment, and you actually have done it. So if that happens to you and you've done the assignment and I'm not seeing it on my end as showing up as you having done it, just send me a screenshot. All right, please make sure that your screenshot includes everything. All right, so for example, on the screenshot here, right, I would want to make sure that I'm getting not only this area here that shows what section I'm working on, but also includes your name up here to show that you're signed in. Okay, and it has questions answered, time elapsed, and a SMART score. Okay, so please make sure that you're getting a full screenshot. If you want to do a snipping tool and just take a section of the screen and send that to me, but whatever works for you best, but make sure that I have all 5 of those pieces of information. Name at the top that you're signed in, section that you're working on, questions answered, time elapsed, and SMART score. Okay, so those 5 things should all be showing in the screenshot if you send it to me, okay? All right, let's see here. All right, Nick asked if it was happening for him, if he was one of the people that I was not seeing, and the answer to that is not as near as I can tell, Nate. If it's happening to you, if I think it's happening to you, I've usually sent you a message already, because if it's happening to people, it's happening for every section, not just like 1 or 2. It's every time they do an IXL section, it's not showing up. So if I'm seeing that you're doing something in one section, it's probably not going to happen to you in another section. All right. So let's make sure that we've got that. All right. So a couple of other things. Let me just admit one more, and I'm going to point something out real quick. All right. So let's get to. All right, Phoebe, are you there?
Yeah.
All right. I am going to rename you. Okay, and the reason for that is we have to have full names. Okay, get into class. All right. So
Yeah, I couldn't figure out
just
how
an
to
initial,
rename it.
either for first name or last name. Make sure that you have full name when you come in. All right. And if are you using a phone or your computer, Phoebe?
Computer.
Computer. Okay. So let me just show people real quick how to change settings for yourselves, because some people set them and don't know how to switch them. Okay. So let me do that real quick. Thank you, Phoebe. All right, so if we go to Zoom, all right, and if we go then to the profile, you see up here where it says my name, and you click edit, all right? So if you click edit, you can select that on your name if you're using your computer. If you're using your phone, all right, and you can change, if you put whatever this thing is called, on yours, all right, you can change that there too, so that you don't have a profile picture. That's the word I was looking for. If you're using it on your phone, if you just go down to the settings menu, you can, and then click on your name up at the top after you do that, you can edit your name and profile picture settings there as well if you're using your phone only, okay? All right, so let's get back to reviewing our notes. So everybody good with their notes? Give me a thumbs up if you got your notes in front of you. And some people didn't submit their notes necessarily through Edsby. Please make sure that you do that if before class, okay? So for the next set of notes, which won't be until next week actually for you guys, please make sure that you're submitting those notes, a picture of them, or a document version of it to me before class starts, all right? All right, so let's take a look at these notes. We're gonna go here and just do these manually here. All right, so let me just get that set. All right, 1 second. My dog decides he wants to all right. Okay, sorry about that. My dog was barking at a neighbor getting his mail. It's the worst offense in the world. Okay, so slope-intercept form is probably the most common version of a linear function that we have. And so this actually, we've been using it already back when we were doing the tables, right? Where we were finding like X, Y values and seeing how they change. Let me move it over here so you can see, right? So if I had 1, 3, 2, 5, right? 3, 7, for example, right? We were seeing how these changed, comparing them to each other, right? So this was going up by 2, this was going up by 1, right? And then we were writing this 2/1 ratio, and that became the coefficient for the X, and then we would figure out what's happening at 0, right? So if we kind of work backwards, that would have been 1, and then this was the number that we were adding. Okay, this was technically slope-intercept form that we were using for these tables. Right? We weren't calling it that because we hadn't learned the name of it yet. But that's really what this is, okay? So that rate of change is our slope. That rate of change from the table is our slope. So this is y equals m, because m is slope, okay? Plus, they call this b. It's really just the value where we start from on that y-axis, okay? So m is the slope in this formula, and b is the y-intercept, okay? Or the point where the line crosses the vertical y-axis, right? So in our example problem, right, we've got 2 pieces of information here, all right? We've got this 3 and this -1. Well, the m is this 3. So technically it's a ratio of 3/1. And this is our y-intercept. So we're going to start, when we're graphing these, from that y-intercept point. It's the point that we know on the graph, meaning where it crosses the y-axis is at -1. Okay? And then we're going to use the slope to then graph the rest of this line. All right? We did this as an IXL section a little while ago, graphing a line using slope and a point. So we have a point, and now we can use slope. So the slope is 3/1. So we're going to go up 3 and over 1. Both are positive, so we're doing 2 positive directions, up and to the right. All right, and if we wanted to go the opposite direction, we would just do 2 negative numbers, because two negative numbers divided by each other would be a positive number as well. So if I go -3 down and then -1 left, I would also get a point there on this, and this would be my graph of that line. Okay, so that's was our example problem here. Okay, let's take a look at the practice. Let me just move our. All right, so on this one, similarly, we have a slope of 2/3, all right? So our slope is not a whole number, it's a fraction, which means we already have our up and right direction of up 2, right 3 for our slope, and then a -4 for our y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. So I'm gonna come down here on the y-axis to -4 and put that intercept, right? That number there is our y-intercept. And then I'm going to use the slope of 2/3 to find other points. So up 2, right 3 would be another point on this line. And I could probably stop there, especially if I'm using IXL. All I need is a second line or a second point to create this line. But if I was doing this manually, I could also go down 2, back 3 as well. All right, this would be another point on this line on the negative side of the y-axis. Whoops, negative side of the x values here. All right, let me fix that up. All right, questions on using slope-intercept to graph? No questions? All right, so let me see. Let's come to Andrew. And Andrew.
Hello.
Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Good morning.
All right. So I'm going to write another problem here, and I want you to tell me where we're going to put our first point and where we would get the information in for another. So if I write this equation, okay, so y equals 1/5 x plus 2. What would be my first point?
Okay, the first point would be the fraction 1/5. 1/5.
Not yet. We actually use this information first. It's the second thing listed, but it's the first thing we graph.
Okay. So then that would just be a +2, and then you'd put a 1 under it, I guess.
Okay, so +2 where? Am I going to this point +2 or this point +2?
Well, I think it's the y.
Right, it's the y-intercept.
It's y.
Use that point first. That +2 is on the y-axis. All right,
Yeah.
now I'm going to use my slope. So I'm going to, what is this 1 going to tell me to do?
To go up 1.
Okay, so I'm going to go up 1, and the 5's telling me to do what?
To go right 5.
Okay, 1, 2,
2, 3.
4, 5. So I would have that.
As the slope.
That would be my line. Okay. Good job, Andrew. Thank you, sir. All right. Let's do one more here. And let me check with Noah on this. Noah, good morning. How are you, sir? Noah, you there? All right, gonna come back to Noah maybe. Mason, gonna come to you real quick. Is Mason there? Maybe, maybe not. All right, look like Trevor has his hand up here. Let's see. Noah says his mic isn't working. All right. Let's see here. Let me get to Trevor then. So Trevor, did you have a question or did you want to answer a question for me?
Answer a question.
You want to answer a question?
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me write another equation up here real quick. So let's try this one. So y equals, let's try negative slope this time. So negative 2x plus 7, let's say. Okay, so what are we graphing first?
-2.
Nope, not yet, right? This is our slope, right?
Right.
Slope-intercept form.
Well, we'll have to, the 7.
Yeah, so we're going to graph the 7 first, right? And that's going to be
Mhm.
7 or this 7. Which one? The one on the X, Y.
One of the Y.
Right, we're always going to the Y first for this one. Right, so that's our first point. And then this -2, what's the ratio that we'll actually use?
7 minus 2, which would be 5.
Well, what does this fraction become? -2 over what?
Over 1.
Over 1, all right. So what does the -2 tell us to do from this point?
Go down 1. Go down 2.
Go down 2, and then the 1,
And then go right
2,
1.
go right 1. All right, good job. So we would have that line for the negative slope.
Right.
A couple of things. Thank you, Trevor, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's notice a couple of things. Both of these slopes, this one and this one, okay, are positive slopes, and as we go left to right, they are going up. Okay, notice they both go up as we go left to right. This negative slope is going down as we go left to right. Okay, so if that's not happening for you, if your negative slope is not going down, let's say you're doing your IXL section and you're not seeing the line going down, but you have a negative slope, reevaluate what you did for your work there, okay? Because we have to make sure that we're graphing the proper type of slope, okay? Any other questions before we move on to the second part of this, which is really, I think, what we're going to be using today on our IXL? No other questions? All right, thank you to those who participated in that, Andrew and Trevor. And Noah, sorry about your mic. We'll see if we can come back to you and maybe see if that works for you a little bit. All right, so let's take a look first at our example here. So in the example, no, there's no example. Why is the example here on our notes? I didn't take a look at the example. So we'll just look at the practice actually first, because the example was from the videos and I forgot to jot down the example on these notes when I printed it. So we'll go to the practice to actually practice this. So when we are looking for slope-intercept from a graph, okay, we're looking for this y equals mx plus b format. Terrible x, sorry. So this b is where it crosses the y-axis, right? That information is contained in the point where it crosses. So for us, that is, let me just do this with a red pen here. So that point is right here, okay? So this value is where it crosses the y-axis, okay? From there, we need to find our slope. That means we can count our slope from the graph, all right? And we'll look for some other points that we can recognize from the graph in this. So we could either recognize this point as a second one here, okay, or up over here, scoot it this way a little bit, or up over here, this point, okay? So we've got two different points that we can recognize on that graph that we could use to find our slope once we've found this one. All right, so our y equals mx plus b will come and do the, just like when graphing it, we graph the intercept first. So when we are looking at a graph, we find the intercept first. Even though it's the second piece of information in the formula, we actually find it first. It's easiest to find first. So where it crosses there is at 3. Okay, so that's going to be, it's a positive 3. So I'm going to say plus 3 for the y-intercept. Okay, so my b value, or where it crosses the y-axis, is at positive 3. So I'm going to put plus 3. If it had been down in a negative, I would put minus 3. Okay, so now I'm going to find the slope. And the way I do that is I simply count up units. So this is 3 to 4 is 1 whole unit. Okay, and then over 2 to that point. So this would be a plus 1 change this way, and then a plus 2 change. So if I'm writing my rate of change or slope as 1, the ratio of up to over or down to over would be 1 over 2. All right, so here I'm going to write a fraction. Oops, let me do it in red. I'm going to write a fraction of 1 over 2, or 1/2 x plus 3. Okay, so questions on that process? Just kind of, you, instead of graphing from the formula, we're going to write the formula from the graph. Any questions there? All right, doesn't look like it at the moment. So this last part, I know we watched the video for it, and this is finding a non-integer intercept, but we're not actually going to practice this in this unit. That's more a pure algebra skill than a pre-algebra skill for this. So we're going to skip going over that, okay, for right now. If we have time, we'll come back to it. But for right now, I think we're going to skip going over that last page of the notes. Nate just sent me a message that says, I did it the opposite. I went down and then went left. Is that a problem? No, not at all. So if you went down though, right, this is a -1 direction you went. And then if you went left to get to that point, it's a -2. So technically your ratio is -1 over -2, which is also then simplified to 1/2. So either way works. So thank you for the question, Nate. It was a good question. All right, any other questions before we get to the IXL section and do a little bit of practice with that? No? All right, so let's get to this. Natalie actually raised her hand. Let's see what Natalie needs here. All right, Natalie, what's
What notes are these that we're doing?
what notes are these? This
Yeah,
is
like
the this is the slope-intercept form notes.
I don't know what those are.
Let me get to the actual slope-intercept form. So unit 9, lesson 3.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
All right, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the IXL section. Let me get back to that real quick. Okay, so on the IXL section, we'll break up into groups here in a little bit to work on this. They are going to show you a graph, okay, and then they want you to write it into slope-intercept form. All right, notice down here it says write your answer using integers, proper fractions, and improper fractions in the simplest form. So don't write something like 10 over 100, because 10 over 100 would simplify to 1 over 10. So always make sure to simplify your fractions if you get those types of fractions. But also the other thing I want to point out with these, so this equation here, 1 second, Trevor got a question it looks like. What's up?
Yeah, I have a question that's nothing to do with this though, but can I ask it?
Could you, I'm sorry, I still having some trouble hearing you, Trevor, on your mic.
Okay. I was saying I have a question that has nothing to do with this though, but I really need an answer because like it's kind of important.
Could you just send that to me through chat? That would probably
Okay.
be a better way to ask that question.
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with this, all right, we're going to look at our y-intercept first. All right. So we see that down here at -90, right? Because it goes -80, then -100. They're not labeling these in between, but they certainly are then are the odd tens, right? So that's -10, that's -30, that's -50, -70, that would be -90. So if I'm writing my y equals mx plus b, I'm going to say y equals something x. I'll come back to that in a second, but I'm going to first do -90. That's the -90 intercept, okay? So now I need to figure out my slope, and I can simply count it based off of these squares, all right? So if you see the grid, right, how much are you going, where's the next point that we can recognize? Well, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there, right? It doesn't matter which one you use, it'll simplify to the same thing. So if I go up 1 over 1 to get to that next point, that's technically a slope of 1, right? So I could put a 1 in here, right? 1 over 1 is just 1. So it says to write it as an integer, so I could write it as 1x. If I left that 1 off and just called it x, it wouldn't count you wrong, okay? So if I write 1x minus 90, that's going to be okay, all right? Any questions on where I got that information from or how you would write that in? Process for typing in your answers here. Make sure that you have a y and an x, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and hit submit. All right. All right, so Trevor's question actually is in regard to attendance. So actually a good place to address this. So thanks for the question, Trevor, because I think some of us as teachers are seeing this kind of be a problem with people across the board. Trevor's question is, have I been marked here when I did the attendance question? And the answer to that is yes, right? We open up the attendance question from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock is when we actually take our attendance. So if you have not answered the question by that point, you're probably going to get marked absent. So if you've answered the question, all right, we are looking at your answers. It's not like we don't care what you're saying to these questions, right? We're interested in the answers. Yes, if you've been answering your question, then you have been marked as present, okay? And if you don't answer your question before 2 o'clock, that's the way that we are taking attendance. So let's say, for example, let me come to somebody. So John.
Hello?
John, you there?
Yes,
Hey.
I'm here.
So you're in Mr. Reese's room, right?
Yes.
So if you don't answer your question, right? You're in this class today, right? If you don't answer your question, I can tell you right now, because Mr. Reese's follows the rules exactly as they're laid out, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in my class and he says, well, John didn't answer my homeroom question, I'm going to mark him absent. And I say to Mr. Reese, hey, but I saw John in my class today. Think he's going to mark you absent still?
Yes.
Yeah, he's going to mark you absent. All right. So make sure that you're answering those questions and getting those things done for your homeroom teachers. Good question, even though it's not necessarily related to math or the topic we're on right now, Trevor. It's a good question and it's a good place to address it. Thank you. All right, so back to this practice here. So this one, we're going to write it in slope-intercept form as well, right? We're going to say -6 is our y-intercept. That's where it crosses the y-axis, not the x. We're not looking at that number. We don't care about that one really. We care about where it crosses the y-axis, okay? And so we're going to say y equals x, right? That's our basic format for this to start with. Then we're going to see where it crosses the y, so it's crossing at -6, all right? Then we're going to come back here and look at the slope, all right? This is a positively sloped line. We're going left to right. So as we go up, we're going up as we go left to right. So that's a positive slope. So we're going to go up 1, right 1 to get to this other point. Once again, it's a 1. So notice I'm not going to write 1 here, okay, because you notice on the last one I did. On this one, I'm not going to put it there to show you that they won't mark you wrong. If your slope is 1, you can just leave it as x because it's 1x, okay? So we can be okay with just doing that. All right, I'm going to skip ahead here for purposes of seeing some more difficult questions, maybe with some different slopes, because all of these appear to be slopes of 1. All right, so here we go. We've got a slope that is a negative slope. Mason, I'm going to come to you real quick. Mason, good morning. You there? Looks like Mason's still not quite there. All right, so let's come to Cade. I'm going to come to you real quick. Cade, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so I said that this is a negatively sloped line. How do I know that just by looking at it?
You can see the line going through the negative area in the graph.
Okay, it goes through a negative area here for y, but it's going through a negative area here for x. That would basically happen for every type of line, right?
Right.
If it continues on forever, it's going to cross through and be in the x negative area, and somewhere it's going to be in the negative y area. So it's a different reason. Why would I be able to tell? What about this line as I go left to right tells me this is negative? If it were positive, what would it be doing as I went left to right?
If you went left to right, it'd be going up, but since it's going down, it's being negative.
Exactly. Good job. Thank you, sir. All right. So as Cade said, this is as we go left to right, this one's going down. So that's how I can recognize that this is a negatively sloped line. So when I'm doing these IXL sections, always make sure that you're typing in the correct information here. So I know that this is going to be a y equals a negative x in some way. That slope is going to be negative. And so what I'm going to look for here is where does it cross the y-axis? That's what's going to be added or subtracted to this. And technically it's at 0, right? So I could say plus 0, oops, 0, or I could leave that off. If I put plus 0, it shouldn't count this wrong. If I leave it off, it shouldn't count it wrong, okay? But now what I need is the actual slope, not just that it's negative, but I need the actual slope here. So I'm going to go from here, where's another point that I can recognize? Well, it looks like it's right there at that 60 mark for the x. So if I go over here, I'm going to go up or down first. So I'm going to go down. That's my negative direction. Okay. And then right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if I'm not sure, if it looks like it kind of crosses through there, I can get it to zoom in a little bit. If I still see this crossing point of that grid, that means it's not actually on that point. So notice how it covers up this crossing point here. That's because the point is actually on it, okay? So make sure that you're not choosing something just because it's close. It actually needs to be on there, okay? So that is a down 1. That's a negative 1 direction we went down. Okay, and then we went to the right, which is a positive direction, 6. So my ratio is -1 over 6, okay? And if I wrote this just as -1/6 x instead of -1/6 x plus 0, it shouldn't count it wrong, okay? All right, so do we have any questions about this section and how to do it at all? All right. If not, I'm going to go ahead and break you guys up into some groups so you can work on this together and get some questions answered for the next 10 or 15 minutes here. It looks like we got about 13 minutes left of this class time. So I'll give you about 10 minutes to work together. If you're confident and don't necessarily want to work in a group, you're welcome to go ahead and just work on it on your own. But please make sure to get that done before we meet again on Thursday at this time. All right, so we have until Thursday to get that IXL section done. And check your EDSB and make sure that you don't be missing IXL sections as well. That goes for anybody watching this back at home on YouTube later. All right, so check your IX or EDSB, make sure that you're not missing anything, because sometimes it's easy to just let things slide by and not finish them up and forget that you haven't finished them. So check it first before we come back to class on Tuesday, all right? All right, one question before I split you up. Trevor, you got a question?
Yeah, it's about the IXL.
About this one?
No, about, can you like skip through this and I'll tell you where to stop at?
Say that again?
You know the question that has like an L shaped, it's an L shaped, there's the Y, then there's the X. It's not this one, but it's a different one. You know what I'm talking about? That one.
I'm not sure. When we split into groups, I'll jump in your room and you can ask me that again. I'll see what I can figure out for you. All right. But let me everybody split up into rooms here real quick. All right. So breakout rooms. All right. So Miss Carrie, I'm going to send some folks with you.
Okay.
All right, so let's do this. All right, I'll put everybody else into this room. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up these rooms. Miss Carrie will be in one, and I'll jump into the other as soon as we split up here. All right, and then we'll come back together right before we end class. So we got about 10 minutes.
Hey,
All right.
Oh, wow.
Andrew, we've been in the same group like so many times.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question.
I'm gonna jump over to the other room real quick and see if anybody needs help over there. Miss Carrie, assistance, and then I'm gonna close the breakout rooms here in a couple of minutes. All right.
okay.
Around.
And then either plus or minus, depending on where it crosses the y-axis. Phoebe, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay.
There's this one question I'm on right now. It's like one quadrant,
Okay.
and the line is going it like intercepts at like on 20, and I don't get it.
Okay, so it intercepts at 20, you said? Let me
Yeah.
find it. Let me move. Hold up. Let me. Hold up.
All right, Miss Carey, we're gonna go ahead and close these rooms out. If anyone
Okay.
wants to come get some additional help later, right? We're both available from 2 to 3, correct?
Yep, I'm here. Phoebe,
All
if
right.
you want help at that time, then just come to my chat, okay? My Zoom lesson.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, if it's just one, do you like not?
All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. It is almost noon, so I need to get onto my algebra groups. But if you guys need any help on this, all right, if you start to struggle, if you go past half an hour, or well past half an hour, I should say, just stop, wait until 2, come see Miss Carey or myself in our office hours. Please check my EDSB page for the office hour code and such. But we're going to go ahead and end this meeting. Trevor, I see your hand up, but I got to go, buddy. If you got a question, send it to me through EDSB or come chat with me later at office hours at 2 o'clock. All right. Guys, keep coming to class, all right? This is helpful to me, to you, hopefully. If any questions you got, we're able to answer here. If you're watching these things back on video later, it's much harder to get your questions answered at that point, all right? So thanks for coming in today. Keep coming back on Thursday, same time, all right?